Well, my friend, who the heck are you then?
My name's Peter Burnett. I'm in Coventry. I work with Barnabas Fund. I'm development manager there. And welcome to Coventry.
What does the Barnabas Fund do? Tell me all about that.
Barnabas Fund serves a persecuted church, mainly in Islamic countries, but really wherever Christians are being persecuted. And the name Barnabas means son of encouragement, and just as the chap in the New Testament called Barnabas, he went around encouraging, so we encourage Christians, mainly Christians who are going through persecution, being discriminated because of their faith, and we encourage them in any way that we can.
Now, can you imagine something like that happening in other parts of the world? But are people still getting martyred for their faith today, for being Christians?
Yeah, certainly. Even in Iraq at the moment, Iran, different countries, Christians are being killed for their faith.
What about this country, brother? Obviously no one's being killed in this country.
No, but we do believe there is persecution here in the UK, and it will get worse.
How is it manifesting itself in the UK at the moment?
Well, churches quite often get stoned if they're in Islamic areas. Sometimes the Muslims are a bit hostile. We can't say that about all Muslims, but certainly in some areas it has happened. Also, you've got to remember that when a Muslim leaves the Islamic faith, he's classed as an apostate, and according to that, he can be killed, according to Sharia law. And very often that doesn't actually happen, but certainly it doesn't make their life very easy. Very often they're an outcast from their family, or other Muslims will actually go against them and make their life quite difficult to live.
What makes you think it's going to get worse?
Well, we can see what's happening in other countries. For example, Egypt, it was a Christian country, now it's an Islamic country, and the Christians are under persecution. 10% of Egypt are Christians, mainly Coptic Christians, but they're under severe persecution there. And even here in the UK, we call it a Christian country, we call it about the Judeo-Christian heritage, but that's being eroded away. The church really needs to be aware of what is happening to our Christian heritage in the UK, and be concerned and pray and possibly do spiritual warfare for the sake of this country. Because we do believe there are principalities and powers that are out to get England and to drive it away from Christian principles.
Now, do you think that the churches can honestly do anything about that? I mean, are we relevant to society?
Well, the one thing that people say is, why isn't the government doing something about it? Now, obviously the government can do a lot of different things, but we've got to recognise that Islam and some of these other things that are happening in this country, there's a spiritual dimension to it. Now, the government that God has set in this world to deal with spiritual issues is not the British government, it's you and me, the church. And we need to face up to our responsibilities of bringing this country back to God. One, so that people will get saved, but also that this country will be blessed. And that's what we're about, is blessing the country and seeing God's blessing in these different situations. The church does need to wake up to its responsibilities. We talk about spiritual warfare, but how many of us as Christians have actually done spiritual warfare, really pleaded with God and done something about this nation? It's something that we believe the church needs to do.
This is city number 55 for me, Peter, and it's the book of 2 Timothy. And there the Apostle Paul is winding up his life, really. He knows the end is nigh for him. He says, I'm ready to depart. I've fought the good fight. I've finished my race. And now there's a crown of righteousness laid up for me. Do you think one of the problems with the church is we don't know our Bible? We've not numbered our days. We're not counting the cost. Are we quite lackadaisical? Are we quite Laodicean?
I think we are. What we don't realise, we forget, is that a lot of the books, especially the New Testament, were written from somebody under persecution to a church under persecution. And we think, oh, it was to a nice cosy church going places. So when Paul says keep the faith, we sort of put it in the context of they're going places and they're really... But it's to a church that was under persecution. The church leaders were in prison. There was police, army after them. They were meeting from house to house. They're going from one place to the next. And so when Paul says keep the faith, he's saying keep the faith. You know, it's something you've got to do because there's so much persecution around. So a lot of the New Testament was written under the auspices of persecution. And even Jesus, in the Beatitudes, he went through simple things like blessed are those who mourn, but then he went on, blessed are those who are persecuted for my name's sake, because he knew it'd be a normal thing for Christians to do, is to be persecuted. And we've got to understand that as the church in the UK, that part of Christian life is persecution. Part of Christian life is also overcoming and being a victor as well. but we've got to face up to realities. But in the church in the UK has got a decision to make. We can either live a cushy life and have no persecution, or we live a Christ-like life, because Jesus said there would be persecution.
The church in Britain, is it a ruin?
There's potential, put it that way.
So you're reasonably hopeful. You think there's some redemption for us as the Church of the Living God in the UK?
Well, there certainly is. We can live victorious lives. Even if the church is under persecution, it's still victorious. Whatever happens, whatever's thrown at it, whatever Satan can do to it, it is still a victorious church. We might have tough things to go through, but our storehouse is not down here, it is up in paradise, and that's what we've got to look at. When we meet Christians who are being persecuted, sometimes we think, oh, they've gone through all these different things, lost their lives, or they've lost everything. They're not disheartened about it. It's us that they often read this and say, oh, well, I'm so demoralised with what's happening. They are thrilled to go through that persecution because they're doing it for the sake of Jesus Christ. And we know that in one sense, God's heart is crying out for them, because he doesn't want Christians to go through that. But on the other hand, his heart is delighted because they are doing it for his sake and for following him. And that's what we're called to do.
Brother, thank you so much for this interview, and God richly bless you.
Thank you.